everyone, welcome to another tutorial. This week is a really fun one. A couple of days ago on our Hot Tip Tuesday, I showed you a couple of secrets. And one of the secrets I showed you was that you can take the basic cuff bracelet design and you can make it into an adjustable ring. And that's what we're going to show you today. We're going to show you with just some simple tools and a little bit of wire how you can make a wonderful adjustable ring that you're going to love, okay? So why don't we get to the project? Before we get to the project though, I really want to remind everybody to visit our website. Here's the web address here, and I've also got it down in the comments. Stop in, take a look around, sign up for our newsletter, and I also want you to check out maybe our list of classes. We're teaching some live classes in a few places, and maybe you're near one of them. If you're not near one of our classes, you can also send us an email. There's an address on our website where you can request a class. Maybe we can put something together in your town, okay? Also, subscribe. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you get all of the alerts to whenever we put something new out. And we put something new out every single week, just so that we can teach you guys how to do the best work you possibly can, okay? That's out of the way. Let's get to the project. So before we get to the project, I just wanted to kind of give you a glimpse at what we're going to be making. We're going to be making this ring. It's a very simple adjustable ring. You can adjust this just about to any size. It's very much like a cuff bracelet. Remember we talked about the cuff bracelet? Here I have a cuff bracelet. See how the gap is here? That's the adjustable portion of this that we can move out and bend into just about any size we want, pretty much. It's prong set. It uses only a couple of wires. I added this little wire here to the front. It's just a little decoration, and we'll do that. I'll show you on this project how to do that, okay? So let's show you what tools and materials we'll need for this right now. Okay, so to begin this project, what we need to do is we need to cut our wire, and we're going to use 18 gauge square wire. We'll start by cutting the shank wires. That's these wires here that make up the arms of the ring, and we're going to cut two of those at 4 inches each. So with wire cutters, just cut one, and then we'll cut the second one at 4 inches each. Now on this, I also said we were going to make a center wire, this little wire here, that's the decorative piece. So we're going to cut one of those at 3 inches. And then finally we're going to cut the prongs, these wires right here, and we're going to cut those at 2 inches, and we'll need 2 of those. So here is one of them at 2 inches. And here is the second one at 2 inches. So now that you've got your wires cut, just run them between your fingers. Now this is a heavier gauge wire, so you might want to use a polishing cloth or just a regular old cloth that you may have laying around, but just straighten them. People like to use a cloth on these because it saves their fingertips. I've got such hardened fingertips now from doing this for all these years that it doesn't bother me anymore. But some people do have sensitive fingertips, and some people have cut themselves also. So just straighten your wires out so that they're relatively straight. And what we're going to do next is we're going to mark these wires. We're going to find the centers and mark all of the centers with a permanent marker. And here's our permanent marker. So remember, these are our prong wires. They're 2 inches. So we're going to mark these at 1 inch. So there's our 1 inch mark. So go across there. So those two are done. This is our decorative wire. It was 3 inches, so we're going to mark the center of this at 1.5. And by marking the centers, what we're doing is we're going to be able to line all of these wires up together into a bundle. And then here's our ring shank wires, and those were 4 inches, so we're going to find the centers of those at 2 inches each. So we'll mark them. Let me get all this lined up and get them squared up. There we go. And we'll mark across those. So all of our pieces are now marked. What we can do is we can line them all up, and then we're going to secure them with a couple of pieces of painter's tape. So to line all of these up, we're going to use some painter's tape to hold it all together. So we're going to start with our middle wire. Our middle wire is the decorative wire. This wire right here, we're going to use that as decoration for this piece. So that's going to be the center. So take the center, and then outside of it will be our prongs. So to the right will be 1 prong wire. So I've got those two centered, lined up rather, and we're going to take our other prong wire and we're going to line it up with all of the centers. So there's our prong wires. Our prong wires are outside of our decorative wire. And now we're going to put outside of that, we're going to put the shank wires. So there's 1 ring shank wire, and here is the other ring shank wire on the outside, left outside, and then the other one's on the right outside. So you got to get them all lined up, and you want to get them lined up as close as you can. Now that you got them lined up, I want you to take a piece of painter's tape, and towards the end of the shortest wire, I want you to stick it across there, and I want you to bring one part of the tape around the back and tape it together. That'll make a flag. And then do the same thing on the other end. So straighten your wires a little bit if you need to. And then take another piece of painter's tape and put it towards the end there. So that's what we have. Our wire bundle is all set. All of our centers are lined up. So now that we've got that, we need to make the cut and wrap area here in the center, and we'll do that right now. So now that we've got all of our wires lined up where we want them, we need to make that cut and wrap area. Now the cut and wrap area that we're going to make is all based on the length of our stone. Now we're using a cabochon that is 25 millimeters long and 18 millimeters wide. So half of this length, the long end of this stone, is the size of the wrap area that we're going to create here in the middle of our wire bundle. So half of 25 millimeters is 12.5 millimeters. So I'm just going to say 12 millimeters for the sake of me not knowing how to do math very well. That's simple math, I'm only kidding, but I hate math. So, and do you know how small a half a millimeter is? It's tiny. So we're going to say 12. So take your ruler, put it in front of you. We're using the millimeter side. And I want you to take the center line that you drew across those, and I want you to line it up with 6 millimeters on your scale. Why? Because that is half of 12. So we're going to then, so we've got it lined up at the 6. And so to the left of the center line right here, we're going to make a line at 0. And then we're going to make a line here at 12. This is the cut and wrap area we're going to do. We're going to go wrap this from here to here. But before we wrap that, we're going to have to file across these with a needle file to make a slight groove here so that the wrap wire can sit in it and everything doesn't move. If you remember from the tutorial we made this cuff bracelet with, we did this cut and wrap area right here in the middle so that these wires don't move back and forth. And this makes a pretty solid piece. And we want to do the same thing with this ring. And I'll show you. This is the cut and wrap area that we're doing right here in the center of this piece. So let's do that now. Let's take our needle file and we'll cut that. So I've got a flat needle file here, and I like to either use a flat needle file or a triangle needle file, just something that's got a flat edge on it that we can make this cut and wrap area. So to start that, I usually take the one edge of my needle file and I will file across where the lines all begin. So I'm cutting a groove. I'm cutting this is just so I remember where I'm doing everything. So I'm going to cut a groove here. So let me bring this closer to you so you can see this little bright spot. You see the bright spot I just made in there? There. That's just the start. And then I'm going to do the ending side the same way. I'm going to cut across all of the wires with my flat needle file just to get a groove started there. Okay, now let me show you what I got. So we've got two bright spots on there that you should be able to see. Now we're going to finish filing just a little bit of this away so that it gives a shoulder for the wire wrap to sit in so that it holds everything in place. And this takes a few minutes and you got to be patient with it, but you just cut a little bit at a time across all of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish working on this off camera, and then I'll be back and I'll show you what I'm doing. So all I'm doing is cutting this groove. Now you got to be very careful when you're doing this because I have filed away parts of my fingertips at times. I'm starting to right there, if you can see, I'm starting to cut myself. Be careful with these. The constant motion of back and forth can sometimes get you. A lot of times I'll put a piece of tape over my fingertip just so it's much easier. But I think I've got the groove cut in there. And it's hard to see on camera, but there's just the very slightest of a groove cut in there. That's going to help it. Plus also how rough this filed away area is. It also adds a little bit of traction to this to be able to hold everything in place also. So now what we need to do, now that we've got that finished, is we need to get our 18 gauge half round wire. And I'm going to cut a pretty good sized piece of this off. Let me get my cutters. I'm going to cut a pretty good sized piece. I'd say about 14 inches, 12 inches. It's better to have more than less. Oh, one more thing about this cut and wrap area. Do this slowly and be patient. Check every once in a while to see how much you've cut away. If you cut too much of this away, this is going to make this really super soft and weak. So you just want a slight groove in there. You don't really need too badly of a groove cut in there. So here's our half round wire. Let me grab my flat nose pliers. Now I'm going to, since this is a little bit bigger gauge wire, I'm going to start my check mark a ½ inch down, and I'm going to be a little bit down into the jaws of this. So bring the long end up over the short end of the tool. So I got my check mark. And we're going to place the check mark on one of the marks that we made for our cut and wrap area. And I like to hold this in one place, and I start my first wrap with this, and then I use this little tab as a finger hold. I put my thumb on it and I will make a couple of wraps, and then I like to squeeze it or set it into place. I'll do the same thing again, make a couple more till I'm all the way across to the other side of the cut and wrap area. Couple more. You want these right next to each other as well, so be careful how you're wrapping. Just make sure you've got everything put in the right place. Just a couple more wraps. There we go. Actually, I think I almost went too far. That should be good right there. So that is our cut and wrap area, and we've got this nice and wrapped up. So let's cut off our excess wire. Cut this side off. And we will push it down. Now, these wire ends will be up against the stone, so you will not see them from the outside. If they looked underneath the ring, they won't be able to see where you cut the ends. And I like that because it's kind of a mystery to some people how it got done, so how the piece was made. So that's our cut and wrap area right there. Okay, I got one wonky little one right there, and you know what? I'm glad I'd made that mistake, so I'm going to show you how to fix it. I fix it by unraveling. So I unravel to that point. I try to. There we go. Got that one started. So then I can kind of undo it just ever so slightly. And see, these are just little things you learn as you go. See, but there's the bad one, so I'm going to fix it. So there, I lined it back up now. And then I'm just going to continue to wrap these back around. You can only unwrap and rewrap one time. Each time you wrap and unwrap, you weaken the wire just that much more. And eventually you'll just end up having to rewrap the whole thing. So there is our last wrap right there. And see, now it's a little bit longer, so I can clip the very end of that. And there. See, so I fixed that wrap. So I'm glad you guys were here for that, because I do make some of these mistakes. I've made tons of mistakes over the years in doing this, and I've learned how to fix my mistakes. So now that we've got everything how we want it, we can take our little flags off, and we can now start setting up the ring shank and moving all of our wires around to start forming the ring. And we'll do that right now. So we've got our wire bundle all wrapped up. Now these long wires are the ring shank wires. So I want you to separate those from each side. So just like this. And we'll do the same thing over here. And what we're going to do is we are going to form these into the ring shank. So I want you to bring them down towards the center, so towards the center of this wrap. We're going to use the wrap kind of as the area that we're going to make sure we've got everything lined up properly. But you want to make these so they cross over one another about right in the middle of the wrap. And do the same thing with the other side. But get these where you want them. And then do the same thing over here. And you want both sides to match up pretty closely. So if you may have to take out your ruler and make sure that, you know, this side is the same as the other one. So this is about 5.5, and this one's about 5.5 from each other. So they should be pretty close to one another. So that's the first part of the ring shank. The second part is where they cross over. Once you're happy with how far they are away from, see this tape? You wouldn't believe how many pieces of tape I end up on me when I get done teaching classes. I end up with this tape everywhere. Okay, so now I think I got it all off my fingertips. So we can go back to this. So where they cross over right here, we're going to take flat nose pliers, and we want to bend each of these arms of the shank outward so that they sit next to one another. The reason for this is that's going to make up the ring shank. So let me show you what I got once I kind of get it. So that's kind of where we are right there. And I'll show you on our sample piece. Can you see where we made this? You can see on the two of them, here's where we are right here, and here we are here. So we're going to do the same thing now with the other side, and we want these to be about the center of the wrap. So this one goes out, and then this one goes out and sits right next to it, just like that. And then you straighten your wires up. I call this housekeeping. So just do a little housekeeping here. Get your wires all straightened how you want them. Okay. So we're still looking at the cut side. This is the side up against the stone. It's going to be hidden. So we're looking at that. So the next thing you want to do is now you want to move your prong wires into place. So those are the next ones. They're the short wires. So move those out at about a 45-degree angle. Each one. So they're... And why do I say that? Because what we want to do is we want to take our stone and we want to be able to set the stone, center it on here, center our stone on here somehow. Hold on. There we go. See, and we want to evenly space the prong wires around the stone. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Hope it's clear that that's what you want to do. So move those out so they're evenly spaced around the stone. And then once you have it evenly spaced, I'm going to set this down in front of me. And we'll zoom in just a little bit. But I'm going to put the stone back on the setting. I'm going to center it on there how I want it. And then I'm going to take a permanent marker. I've got my fine tip permanent marker, and I'm going to mark the wire just outside of the stone. I'm going to mark each prong wire, and then this last one's tricky, so we got to reline everything up because you run out of fingers, your arm space here. So let's realign it up. Okay, and then this last prong right here. So when you take the stone away, let me show you what you've got. So we should have a mark on each prong. So you can see them really well down here. That's where we're going to bend our prong wires. So take flat nose pliers, and where each one of those are, I want you to line your flat nose just outside of the mark, and I want you to bend the end of the wire toward you. Make sure that you've got, this is the inside of the piece, that cut side. So I'm going to bend this wire toward me. So this is what you've got so far, and then I'm going to do the other two. This will allow us to set the stone in place. And then the last one right there. So if we take our stone now, you should be able to set, if it wasn't so slippery, this is slippery stone. So you should be able to set the stone in here. I just bent the wires over the top of the stone just ever so slightly, just so that we can get an idea as to where everything is going to be at. So you see what we've got here? The stone is now held firmly into place, and there's our shank wire. So now it's starting to look like a ring. So now we've got to cut these prong wires, and we'll do that right now. Okay, so we've got the prong setting pretty much done here as far as how making sure we've got our wires around the stone how we want them. So just separate these a little bit just so you can get the stone out. I'm just bending these outward just enough to be able to get the stone out. So there, I've got my stone removed. Now we've got to measure the length of our prongs so that they just fit slightly over this. Now this is how I like to do this, is I like to measure the width of the stone. If you've already know this, then this is a step you don't have to do. But this is about 5 millimeters at its thickest. Right there. So if you can see that. So from the bottom of my stone to the top of it, it's about 5 millimeters. I'm going to make a prong then. Each prong is going to be 6 millimeters long. And I measure that 6 millimeters from this very bottom, where it's going to seat and sit up against the prong, this prong seat right here. So this is a little tricky to do, and sometimes it takes a couple of hands, but hold the prong in your fingertips and then kind of add the scale to your fingertips, and then take your permanent marker. I'm doing this in the air. A lot of times I do this right up against my workbench, and I'm just going to mark this where I want to cut it. So this is about 6 millimeters. So right there. It's a nice dark mark right there. And I'll do this with all 4 of the prongs. I will measure each prong from its seat 6 millimeters, and then I'm going to take some wire cutters and I'm going to clip that off. So this is just a little bit better. I'm still working on trying to find the best way of doing this. So now I've got all 4 prongs marked. I can then take some clippers and I can carefully clip each one off. Make sure that you can see your mark. Don't blindly cut. There we go. There's 1. And then there's 2. And then here's number 3. And number 4, which, if you now just notice that, I cut it too short. Okay. So now we can take our stone and put it back in our setting. And the prong should be long enough to go over the stone. And they are. So if you can see that. Each prong is plenty long to go over the stone. Now, this is a step, what you need to do with these prong ends is they're very sharp and they're very blunt. So take your file, and I want you to just file these kind of round the edge. Now, I've showed you this on the cuff bracelet tutorial to do the same thing. Take your file and just cut across it using the file, but I have this other method, and this is my rotary tool, and this has a diamond polisher in it, and I've got a link down in the description for my video as to where you can get these. They are silicone rubber polishers, and these are the white ones, and they're coarse, and they polish and cut. So let me show you what it does. I'll show you how to do this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to shape the end of this with this diamond, with this polishing tool. So let me show you. Kind of hard to see, but notice what the end looks like now. It gave it a nice rounded edge to it. I'm going to do that with all the other ones. So let me do that off camera and I'll show you what we've got. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I have rounded all 4 of these corners. The stone is now ready to be set in the setting. So to do that, just place it inside your prongs and then take flat nose pliers. Drop the stone, of course. The thing about these carnelian stones is they are so slippery. All right, let's try this again. So I've got it set in here, and I've got to make sure I got it squared up. So take one jaw of the flat nose and put it at the bottom, and the other one, put it at the top of the prong, and just rock it into place. So I just pushed that up over the stone. And remember, we're using dead soft wire. Okay, so then I got this prong set, so I'm going to go to the opposite prong. So remember, we're going to go to the bottom and then to the top of the prong, and we're going to push that up over the stone. So that's 2. So let's go up to this one now and hold it at the bottom with one jaw and go to the tip with the other jaw and push down. That's number 3. And then number 4, down here, we're going to do the same thing after I adjust it just slightly. Okay. At the bottom, push it up over the stones. Now we should have all 4 of the prongs now set in place, and now we can start doing something with the ring shank. So to form the ring shank, center the cabochon at about a size 4 and hold it there with your thumb, and then take the arms of the ring, and I want you to push it around the other side of the ring mandrel. And then I want you to do the same thing with the other side. So keep it centered at a size 4-ish, and then bring the other arm around the other side of the ring mandrel so that they cross over on the other side. So this is where we're at. So here's our size 4. Now why do I say a size 4? Because you want to kind of go small with this. So squeeze that together just a little bit, just to kind of retain that size 4. And then I want you to mark with your permanent marker across all of those shank wires right around the center. So use this, or use the center of the wrap as your centering mark. And I want you to just draw a straight line across all 4 of these wires. This is going to be where we wrap these. Okay, there. So we've got a nice straight line across all of our wires. So now you can undo this just slightly. So just kind of straighten these wires so that they kind of stick out. This is going to help us to be able to work with this, because what we're going to do is we're going to add a wrap that starts here, and it's going to go up 3 wraps to there. And what we're doing is we're doing this bottom part here on the ring. We've got 3 wraps here that we put in, and this is how we're going to do it. So take a piece of 18 gauge half round wire, and you only need, I would say, about a 3 or a 4 inch piece of this. You don't need a whole lot. And using your flat nose pliers, set your wrap up. So you're going to put it on here. You're going to make your hook, and then I want you to place the hook across those 2 wires where you made your mark. And I'm going the wrong way, because what we want to do is we want to actually wrap from that mark toward the stone. Okay, so we've got our 2 wires. And if you need to, you can tape these 2 wire ends together. So I'm just going to make my first wrap here. See, so I got my first one. So there's 1. And then I'm going to feed it through this center. It's number 2. And then 1 more. It's number 3. And I'm going to finish this up on the inside. And then we have this little tab here on the outside. Just push this to the inside of the ring. And then now you can take flat nose and you can flatten out that ring shank wrap. Okay? And then trim off the excess. There's that. And then we're going to trim this one off. And I'm only going to trim it so that it meets about halfway on the 2 wires, 2 shank wires, and push those guys down with flat nose so that nothing moves out of the way. Okay, so we got those 2. Let's do the same thing over here. Straighten your wires out. And like I said, if you need to put a piece of tape here to hold these together, that's perfectly fine. I'm telling you, tape is your best friend when it comes to doing this, because these wires can get out of hand and we want to tame them. So make your check mark. We are here on the, almost did it backwards again. We're here so that we can wrap from the mark toward the stone. So we'll do that again. So that's number 1. And feed this into the center. Okay, and then grab it and bring it around and tuck it nice and tight. That's number 2. And do the same thing again. There's number 3. We're going to finish on the inside. Take our little piece here and we'll roll him onto the inside of this a little better than that, because I've got it a little off centered. So let's fix that. Okay. And make sure everything is nice and lined up, and then squish them all down. Trim them short. And this ring shank is nice and secured now. There's 1. And there we go. So we've got this ends nice and done. And now you want to take the ends of these wires And just like on the cuff bracelet project, we're going to bend them over the wrap. So look how I'm doing this. I'm just bending these wire ends up over the wrap, and then I'm going to trim it short. So I'm going to trim it about the same width of the wrap. So let me show you what I got. See, so the end of it is kind of right here where the wrap is. And then we'll take your flat nose pliers and just push it up against the wrap. Check it to make sure. I always file this down, the ends of this down, so that it does not cut anyone. The last thing you need is somebody getting hurt on a piece of your jewelry. So just take your needle file and take some of this off so that it is nice and smooth up against it. And do the same thing on the other side. Take those wire ends and push them down over the wrap. Trim these off. And then the flat nose, will just push them up against the wrap and file them smooth. Now I'm not taking a whole lot of time to file these smooth because we would sit here for hours, because if I did everything in real time on here, this would be a very long video, even longer than it is. Okay, so that's where we're at. So now just put it back on your ring mandrel at about a size 4. Keep hitting my camera too. You guys can only imagine what this looks like as I'm doing this, because I am actually hugging my camera tripod. I'm working around it. So everything I'm doing, I'm looking at through the viewfinder as I'm hammering and cutting and doing all of this. Now, I am tapping this up against the ring mandrel so that it hardens the wire. But here's where we are. So make sure you got a nice ring shank. I'm going to fiddle with mine for just a second, just to make sure I've got a really good balanced ring shank, about as close as I can get. Now this is really tiny. This is probably about a size 4. But if I were to put it on a ring mandrel, and let's say I go up to a size, here's a size 7 right here, and I can just reshape it ever so slightly, and now it will fit a size 7. So I know my pinky is a size 7. And you see it's got just a slight gap here, and the ring fits really well. So it can go from about a 4 to, I'd say, about an 8 on here. You can kind of adjust this, but it's best to start off small and then go up. So now all we have left is this center part, these nice decorative wires. And let's take care of that right now. So now we need to do something with these decorative wires. Now, if you don't want to put the decorative wires on there, then don't add this piece to the center of this. Just add your prong and your shank wires. Don't put this third one in, or this fifth one in rather. But what we can do is we can just loop this onto the top of the stone in a nice decorative manner. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time doing this, only because I don't want you to feel like you have to do this pattern the way that I'm doing it. I want you to kind of come up with something of your own. But I just do want to show you, though, that this is a nice addition to this, to be able to have this additional wire to go across the stone. So I'm not going to really spend a whole heck of a lot of time doing a lot with this, but I am going to see if I can't. There we go. I wanted to get that outside of that prong. Okay, so that's kind of what I want. I want something simple. And I'm going to trim it. And again, I'm going to want to file this, but I'm going to shape it just slightly more, just to kind of give it what I want. here's one. And then let's do this other one. So just kind of try and match these up. There. There. So I just added just a simple decoration on there. Now, what's interesting about this is you can, depending on how wide your stone is, you can add more than one of these center wires to use as a decoration. You can add a couple of wires to the decoration so that you can add more of a decoration on the stone. You can interweave these. You can wrap them together to give you a nice decorative front on these. There's so many things you can do. You can make it, but definitely when you do this, make sure that it complements the stone. See, I'm using a stone that's very evenly colored, so the contrast of the copper against it is really nice. But I would, what I definitely would is I would definitely cut this down, meaning I would take a file and I would file this edge down. So I'd pull it up away from the stone, and then I would give it a file, or I would use my rotary tool, and I would do the same thing I did the prongs to these, and then I'd push them back down. Okay, so let me do that, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to use my rotary tool on that. See how I've got it away from the stone so that it doesn't cut into my stone. So now that I've got it done, got it formed, I'm going to just push this back up against the stone like that. See, and I've got both of these ends now are nice and tapered. Now to get this closer to the stone, you just have to use some flat nose pliers and kind of bend it at the base, as well as bending the tip of the wire down to kind of push it up against the stone. And if that doesn't work, well, we can use a persuader and just tap it up against the stone. Just a rawhide mallet. See, and there we have just a very basic piece, nice adjustable ring. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? With just a few basic wire wrap techniques, you can create so many different things. The only thing stopping you is you. You really need to practice. You really need to create. You really need to sit down and try and figure out some new and interesting ways to use the basic techniques that you have to make some awesome jewelry. So I'm glad you stopped by. Do me a favor, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought about the video. Give me a thumbs up too. I always like it when I get those likes. Here, I'll put it up this way because I think that's the way that the icon's going to show up at the bottom. But please like the video, share the video as well. Let everybody know some of the things you're learning over here. I'm sure everybody would love to know how to make their own wire wrap jewelry. So again, thanks for stopping by. I'm Jim McIntosh, and please remember, practice, practice, practice.